Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
TV, I'm excited, man. Trade season is in full effect. TV's messing around with new gear to help the podcast upgrade day by day. We got content coming out every day this week. Just stay tuned in terms of the stuff that we are working on. But today, TV, we are reacting to one of the most notable stories in the NBA, being the All-Star selections. And that's always a good time because we know that for every person that's selected, there's going to be a snubs list. And it's always great to discuss who fell just short of being in the All-Star game.
100%. We're going to be reacting to the starters very shortly in this episode. We're going to be making our All-Star Reserve picks, which is going to be some great conversation. There's going to be some guys that are going to miss out, guys. That's just how things are going to work. And we're going to preview something that we're going to do next episode as well, where me and Jay are going to put our little GM hats on. We're going to offer each other up some trades, and they're going to pretend, and the other person's going to pretend to be the other GM, and they're going to see whether we accept trades or not. So we're going to do some little mock trades there as well. It's going to be a great episode. It's going to be super fun. We have a lot to talk about today. It's going to be an awesome show. But before we get into that, we do have to plug our socials. Make sure you're following our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at the Knockdown J / Jumper on any of our socials. Those links can be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws pod, remember to follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. We got the picks, we got some news, we got some new series coming out, we got the clips. All that stuff you can find over there. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on all the podcast networks, Spotify and Apple as well. Please remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. Guys, we've been posting on the YouTube Shorts too, so if you're missing out on some of the clips, some of these series that we're doing, make sure you check out the YouTube Shorts. We have stuff up there daily. Jay, are you ready to get into this?
Yeah, man. Despite the fact that this is a condensed episode, it's also a jam-packed episode because we have a lot to get into today. A lot to get into today.
100%. There is a lot to get into. And we're going to start now, Jay, because we're going to, before we make our reserve picks, I know we have to make our reserve picks pretty shortly, but we are going to be reacting to the starters because the starters are now available. They were reviewed to us last week on NBA on TNT. Here are the Eastern Conference All-Star starters. We got Jalen Brunson in the backcourt alongside Donovan Mitchell, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jason Tatum, and Karl Anthony Towns. Jay, any problems with the East starters?
No, I think this is completely fair. I think in terms of the talent that's on the board, these are the guys that have performed the absolute best so far in the Eastern Conference. All guys that I think are at the top of their game right now. And shout out to the New York Knicks for being the guys that first struck in terms of getting two guys on the board out the gate. And shout out to Karl Anthony Towns specifically. First year in the East and already making his presence felt. That is super great to see for him. The dude's been balling out. I think the most interesting thing so far, just with the starting groups from both the East and the West, is that TV, there was like a cool week and a half where it seemed like LaMelo Ball was set to be one of the starters. If we were going strictly
I think he was still number 2 in like All-Star like fan voting, right? At the last
man.
day.
There was a point where he was in a far and away lead in terms of the fan voting. But at the end of the day, the media panel and the player panel did make up the other portion of it. And I think looking at appear in Jalen Brunson as a better option was not only the best option, but I think the most fair option when you consider that Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks are playing at a high level right now, while LaMelo Ball, although is putting up astronomical numbers, the Charlotte Hornets have not looked very competitive with his time on the floor. And at the end of the day, I do just believe that the Knicks are very deserving of having two starters given the way they played this year.
Yeah, honestly, I have. If you guys saw my TikTok video, I said this is my 5. So like, I have no problems with this list. I know who knows if we have LaMelo even on our bench list as well, on our reserve list. That's gonna be a discussion for later. But yeah, no problems with the East. But over here on the West, we got a lot of unks here, Jay. We got a lot of unks here. We have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, our boy. We got Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Nikola Jokic. How do you feel about the starters? Honestly, I think that, yes, we have the 2 MVP candidates, but we got guys here who have been here every year, so I'm not mad about it.
Dude, this is the ultimate lock. The West was definitely handled properly, and I think that when you really look at it, this was exactly what the list was supposed to be. I think both sides did a very good job of getting the right guys selected for the starting group, but I think the West, more than anything, there is no disputing that that five is the five for sure.
No, on 100%. Like this is like the perfect mix of yes, we have the best players in the league. Obviously, Shai Alexander, Nikola Jokic being the top two MVP candidates. But
Yeah.
then we have the guys who are like NBA fan favorites, the guys who are the faces of the league for over a decade now, and KD, LeBron, and Steph. The game being in Golden State as well, you love to see Steph in the starting lineup. I mean, these guys have carried the league for like the last 10, 15 years. They 100% deserve to be here. I'm glad they were able to make it. But Jay, we have the starters locked up. We've talked
Yeah.
about the starters. It's time to get into reserves, and these are where we have to make some tough decisions. We talked about it before the pod. We're going to start with the West, and we're going to be making our West reserve guard spots, our guard predictions. So Jay, I'm gonna throw it over to you. Who do you have as your two reserve guards for the Western Conference All Stars?
That one is okay. Let me pull back up what I had before. Here we go. There we go. My two West guards that I think, and personally, I think they should be locks, are Anthony Edwards and Kyrie Irving.
I have the
I
exact same
feel,
two.
yeah, I feel pretty
Yeah.
strongly about it. Do you want to take Kyrie or do you want to take Anthony Edwards?
No, you know what? I'll take Anthony Edwards. Look,
Okay.
the Minnesota Timberwolves. We all know they haven't had the best season so far, but the one bright spot. There's a lot of struggles. Rudy Gobert's not been playing at his best. They don't have a healthy Dante DiVincenzo after finally putting him into the starting lineup. Mike
Right.
Conley hasn't been playing near his best. They're just barely over 500 right now. But the guy who is still putting on a show, the guy who is still clearly the best player, Anthony Edwards, deserves to be an All Star. Career high in 3-point shooting. He's like at 42, 43% on like the most attempts in the league per game. He has the 3-point shot. He still's got the highlights. He's averaging like 26 points per game still. As much as the Timberwolves are struggling, and yes, that whole trade happening before the season is a different conversation, but Anthony Edwards is still balling. He's not the problem with the Timberwolves right now. He deserves to be an NBA All-Star reserve on this list. Jay, what do you got about Kyrie?
Yeah, man, I completely agree. In terms of Kyrie Irving, at 32 years old, Kyrie Irving is averaging 24.4 points per game, nearly 5
Ridiculous.
assists per game, and shooting nearly 43% from three. The Dallas Mavericks are still in the hunt in terms of the playoffs right now. They're sitting at the ninth spot, but they're only a game back of honestly being within the eight and a few games back of being locked in within the six. And that's all with the fact that Luka Doncic has missed not just sometimes, significant time.
Like half the season at this point,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yes, missed significant time throughout the season. And don't get me wrong, Kyrie Irving missed a couple of games at the beginning of the year as well. I believe he had some kind of herniated disc or something of that nature to kick off the year. Not necessarily to start at the year, but it was earlier on, I believe in the month of January, he had a little bit of a hiccup. But nonetheless, he has definitely been the Mavericks' most productive player in terms of being available and also producing at a high level. This is a guy who I think has deserved the All-Star nod, a guy who I think kind of has fall into the wayside in terms of like the grand conversation of top guards in the league. But when we're talking about making the All-Star game, don't get me wrong. Guys like John Morant, guys like De'Aaron Fox, they're interesting candidates, but they're going to be guys that I can't put on my personal list right now before a guy like Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving to me is definitely a lock for the reserves list, and hopefully, hopefully the voters agree because I think that he's one of those guys that just should be there.
No, 100%. I like resonate with one of the points you put there too. I mean, like I feel like no one is talking about Kyrie Irving at all
Yeah,
being one of the top guards. Like there's been a lot of talk about obviously Shea Alexander, Jalen Brunson. I feel like Trey Young has been talked about more this year than Kyrie Irving himself, which
yeah,
is which is a weird phenomenon because Trey Young is the one who
right.
we're like no one talks about Trey Young, but I feel like Trey Young is being more talked about this year than Kyrie. And
Yeah,
Kyrie, like you mentioned, the stats are there. He's almost 50-40-90. This is how like crazy his season has been. Almost a 50-40-90 player. It's like still doing all he can to keep the Mavs in the race. Remember, this is a team that made it to the NBA Finals last year, and they've like had injuries to like Lively. Like they have no big men right now. They have
right.
no big men to show for it. Luka Doncic has been out for half the year, and Kyrie Irving's been keeping them afloat. So shout out to him. Me and Jay both have the same West guards to start off with. Jay, let's move on to the NBA All-Star West forwards
Okay.
here. This one's going to be interesting because there's a few guys who might miss out, but I'm going to throw it over to you. Who do you have as your West forwards?
Okay, so do you want me to name all three?
Yeah, all three. Go for all three.
Okay, so my three: Victor Wembanyama, lock, in my personal opinion. I'm gonna say I believe that Jaren Jackson Jr. should also be a lock.
Yeah.
And then the last one, and this may be a little controversial, but I'm going to call it a lock because I just think that he's been a huge contributor for a team that nobody thought was going to be this good this fast. Put my boy Alperen Sengun in the game, man. He's got to be in the game.
Ooh, that is interesting. I mean, we might have some LP talk about later, um, but in terms of my three locks at the four position, I got myself Victor Wembanyama. Duh. There's no way we weren't gonna have Victor Wembanyama in there.
Right.
Honestly, potentially could have been a starter. Um, I got myself. I thought this guy was gonna be a lock. I'm surprised you didn't say him. Anthony Davis.
He's going to be on my reserves list. He's
Okay,
going to
yeah,
be
that's
on my
right.
reserves list as
Yeah.
well.
So we got Anthony Davis as my
Yeah.
lock at the four position. I feel like again, if you guys haven't seen my TikTok video, I said that if we're going by performance this year, not by star value, not by all that, he potentially deserves to be a starter. I think he's been better than LeBron throughout the course of this season on both ends of the court. But yeah, I digress. I think he's a lock. I also have Jaren Jackson Jr. I think that he's having such a great offensive season, especially with the missing of John Moran and still performing at a high level defensively, that he deserves to be on it. What do you give me some of your reasons for yours?
Yeah, so I'm gonna start with Jaren Jackson Jr. because he's kind of one of those guys that I think is only gonna get a lot of buzz in the like NBA diehard community when it comes to really paying attention to the productivity at the big man position this year because you have the Anthony Davises, the Wembanyama's, the Nikola Jokic's of the world that have been balling. And that's just the guys in the West,
I
right?
know.
So it puts
It's
him in a really tough
crazy.
spot. But Jaren Jackson Jr. has been one of the best two-way players in the league so far this season, and he's not getting talked about because the Memphis Grizzlies have not been the talk of the town the way they have been in years past in terms of their exciting play on the floor because their roster's just not that exciting. Let's be honest. They
They're
they go
playing
through
12 guys a game.
yeah, they're playing a million dudes at one time, and at the end of the day, John Moran has been in and out of the rotation due to injury, and the guy who has been keeping Memphis afloat during that time frame, granted, also Desmond Bain has been an absolute beast, but Jaren Jackson Jr. is having a career year, almost 23 points a game, almost 6.5 rebounds, a block and a half, and a steal and a half per game. The dude is doing it on both sides of the floor, and he's been positioned right now to be arguably maybe the second or third real candidate in Defensive Player of the Year behind Victor Wembanyama, in my personal opinion.
He's up there. He's definitely up there.
Yeah, so Jaren Jackson Jr. is one of those guys. The reason why I had him as a lock is because he is clearly stepping into the second best player on a championship caliber team role very strongly this season and compared to seasons past with the Memphis Grizzlies, where it kind of felt like he was a really good co-star but never understood truly how to maximize his role as a number two. Clearly last year with all the injuries where he was kind of forced to be the man on that side of the ball, specifically offense, I think he has really grown into a real secondary option for this team and a guy who you can actually really run offense through for the first time in his career confidently. And he's starting to show out in a real way. Super impactful for a team that's atop the West. Obviously not at the very tippity top, but one of the top three teams in the Western Conference. And when I have to go apples to apples with him and Anthony Davis, I think Anthony Davis may be an overall more talented player, but I think given also the contribution to team success, the Grizzlies are the better squad right now, and Jaren Jackson Jr. technically has been doing it with less help when you give the fact that John Morant's only played 27 games.
No, Jaren Jackson Jr. 100% deserves to be here. I'm not sure if I don't know if we talked about this on pod or off pod, but I think like I mentioned before how last season it was a disaster for the Memphis Grizzlies. Let's be completely honest.
Yeah.
But the one thing that came out of it was that Jaren Jackson Jr. was forced to be put in an offensive role. So no John Morant, not a lot of Desmond Bain last year. So Jaren Jackson was forced to be the number one option when he definitely didn't have those reps before that. But what that did was it prepared themselves for this season when their team is complete. John Morant again was still coming in and out of the lineup because of injury, but now he's ready. He's improving like in terms of creating his own shot, making sure that he gets it by like getting in isolation, also like working in the pick and roll, and he's like still maintaining that defensive effort, which is something that you see with some guys like a la Mikal Bridges in the East, where you have to give so much to the offensive game that it kind of digresses yourself from the defensive end. Jerry Jackson Jr. has not let up because he knows that he is the defense of the Memphis Grizzlies. And honestly, Zach Edey has helped them as well on the inside, but he's been absolutely fantastic. He deserves 100% to be there. And yeah, I honestly think both of our picks are great. Any other thoughts? I mean, like Wemby, there's nothing much to say. We know why he's there.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
the thing is with Victor Wembanyama, that's a guy who you can make an argument legitimately could be a starter. We know LeBron James is going to be the guy that comes out on the floor first. It's kind of part of the gig, but
Yeah,
I
it
think
is.
that you can make a real argument that Victor Wembanyama, just as an individual talent, has been more impressive than. Really,
LeBron
you
and
can.
KD.
I was gonna
LeBron
say,
and
see, I didn't
KD
want to get
both.
too messy, but you can make a real argument that Victor Wembanyama has actually been more productive when you count his overall two-way ability. That he's been more productive than Kevin Durant and LeBron James at the
Yeah,
wing spot. And
that's
given the
not
fact that
crazy to
he's
say.
also, yeah, also given the fact that he's in the defensive player of the year conversation, shoot, he's the leader of the race at 21 years old. He has all the intangibles this year and the overall individual success to make an argument that he could be the most talented forward that actually, makes the game in terms of what his productivity has been this season in particular.
Yeah, no, 100%. You took the words out of my mouth. I have nothing really to add. Like we know how good Wemby is. He probably could be a starter. He probably will be a starter once like LeBron and KD end up leaving the league.
Right.
He's gonna be that guy where you're like, okay, we're gonna pencil him as one of the forwards. Who else is gonna be in that starting lineup? But yeah, this gonna be his 1 year in the reserve. It's fine. He'll be there in the years coming up. And I'm just gonna speak on Anthony Davis quickly, just because I know you're gonna speak on him a bit later.
Yeah.
Amazing season. Again, one of those guys where I feel like no one appreciates the fact that he's actually been healthy this season and very productive. 26 points per game, 12 rebounds, 50% from the field, almost 80% from the free throw line, 3.5 assists. One of the best defenders. I know the defense of the Lakers hasn't been, at its absolute best, but he still has 2 blocks per game and 1.5 steals. Doing it all, he's healthy. What more can we ask for from Anthony Davis, man? Like we always complain about the fact that he's not going to be on the floor. He's not productive. Like he hasn't shown the production on the court, especially because he hasn't been able to be on the court. But he's
Yeah.
been doing it like all year so far, playing 40 games. That's like I think he's only missed like what 4 or 5 games. You can't hate on AD this year. He's been great.
No, it's actually hilarious because, like you said, it's crazy how when he's actually healthy, we don't hear about him very much.
Right?
And when he's injured all the time and he's off the floor, that's when everybody seems to be knocking down his door, wondering what the heck's going on with him. But TV, here's the most impressive part to me. The crazy part is 26-12 should be impressive all on its own, but he's third in stocks so far this season, which is an impressive thing at the big man spot as it is. And then when you go on top of it, there's kind of some deeper stats that kind of like really highlight his impact as a rim defender this year. Opponents are shooting almost 10.5% worse from inside 6 feet. This is one of those type of drop-offs in terms of overall conversion rate that pretty much puts him at the tippity top amongst rim protectors within a group that really is only Rudy Gobert and Evan Mobley in terms of rim defenders this season in particular. Mind
Yeah.
you, we were just talking about Victor Wembanyama, who might be the leader in the defensive player of the year race, and he has not even been this significantly impactful around the rim. Granted, no, an elite shot blocker nonetheless, and it's only his second season, so this drop off is something that we kind of have to keep a close eye on. But it's not just the 26-12 that Anthony Davis is putting up that makes it so impressive. He's anchoring an elite level defense for the Lakers that, you have to be honest, has not played up to his potential around him, but his individual efforts has made him absolutely special, and is what's keeping the Lakers together, where they're a top 6 seed right now.
Yeah, I mean, like with the way people are complaining about the Lakers, you would think that they're in a playing spot. They're a freaking 5 seed right now, guys.
Right.
So, I mean,
Right.
again, there's problems with the team, but they're a freaking 5 seed. So I don't think they're complaining about that right now. But
Yeah.
but yeah, no, Anthony Davis definitely deserves some love. We're gonna go into Alperen Sengun very shortly because we're gonna talk about our wild cards. And that means these two guys, doesn't matter, guard or forwards, who is going to be able to make the Western Conference All-Star, the All-Star team. You said Anthony Davis was one of yours. Who is the other guy?
Yeah, so Anthony Davis is one, and then the other guy I feel like that. I mean, should be undeniable. It's Jalen Williams. It's Jalen Williams.
Interesting. He's a snub for me. Wow,
I
that's
don't.
the one.
This is my personal opinion. I know we're in the Western Conference, but I think that this is the clear way to put it. If the New York Knicks are going to have two All-Stars, if the Boston Celtics, who we know are going to have two All-Stars, if the Cleveland Cavaliers wink, wink, nudge, nudge, at least in my eyes, might end up having 3 All-Stars, maybe even 4 All-Stars.
Maybe.
I think that the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have been in the driver's seat in the Western Conference, should have 2 All-Stars, especially not just
No.
as a pity party, but
No.
Jalen Williams has
He
legitimately
deserves it. I
been
know
a
he deserves it
special player.
too.
TV,
Yeah.
Jalen Williams played center for like 2 weeks when
I
Isaiah
and
Hartenstein and the other Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren's been out. This man played the 5 for this team. He's the definition of do anything you ask in order for the Oklahoma City Thunder to now be what is currently the best team record-wise in the entire NBA so far, while averaging 21 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 5 assists a game. This dude is Mr. Do It All, and Mr. Do It All should be in the All-Star game.
I respect it. I'm gonna be completely real with you. He is my first guy off, and the reason why Alperen Şengün is one of my wild cards. I talked about it earlier. I was gonna talk about him very shortly. We're gonna talk about Şengün shortly.
Yeah.
But the guy I have over him and slightly over him. Remember, this is like for me neck and neck.
Okay.
James Harden, man. James Harden deserves some freaking love this year. Show my boy James some. The freaking Clippers are a top 6 seed.
Yeah.
Like we talk about teams, like we talk about the Rockets, who, yes, fair enough. We didn't see that coming. Them being the number 2 seed. And by the way, they just beat the Cavs in back-to-back games. Wild. But they were able to do that. A team that we didn't think was going to be in the play-in at all. Jay, we were talking about how much the drop-off is going to be with this Clippers team.
Yeah.
But James Harden is keeping them afloat. 22 points per game, 6 rebounds, 8 assists. Don't look at the efficiency. But when it comes to James Harden, we don't look at the efficiency. Almost 90% from the free throw line, though. Almost 90% from the free throw line. But man, James Harden at 35 years of age is still leading a Clippers team who had no business being in a playoff spot at all. He deserves to get his love here. I talked a lot about Norman Powell in our last episode and showing love to him, but the best player this year for the Clippers has been James Harden. And I know that the Thunder deserve multiple. This is what's the problem with the West. There's just so much good talent out west.
Yeah.
And I was gonna put J-Dub in. He was in my lineup.
Yeah.
But I just slide him out for James, man. I just slide him out because the Clippers deserve some love too.
I can't even be mad at you because at the end of the day, James Harden has just been that productive, and especially with the starting of the year being without Kawhi Leonard. Now, obviously, they picked up steam significantly since Kawhi's return. Had a really good set of games, like you mentioned, against the Cleveland Cavaliers this past week. And Ivica Zubac has been really good. I think he's been arguably a top 5 rim defender so far this year. He's been a huge part of why their defense has been so solid this year. But like you mentioned, the LA Clippers, they were a team that I think a lot of people came in with low expectations, including ourselves, in terms of how we felt about this team as a real viable contender. And maybe we still don't feel strongly about them in terms of being able to raise the Larry O'Brien, so to speak. But in terms of being a competitive team in the Western Conference, they have lived up and beyond whatever the expectations possibly could have been. And right now, here they are sitting right there at 6th in the West. And they're only 2 games back of the Nuggets. Same thing with the Lakers, 2 games back of the Nuggets for a top 4 spot. That's not something we were talking about before the year started. So he was actually, unironically, he was my first guy off the list.
Exactly. Here's the thing.
Along with De'Aaron Fox. Those two guys.
De'Aaron Fox is also there.
Those were the 2 guys for me that were directly off the list.
So I think our overall grouping for the West is basically the exact same. Our biggest difference is J-Dub versus James Harden. And I can see it both ways, and I understand it from both ways. I think the productivity of the Oklahoma City Thunder, also given that J-Dub has been able to be not only a Swiss Army knife, but like a complete threat at literally every position he's played.
I really want to put him in. I really want to put him in.
But I can't be mad at James Harden either. Yeah. That's why I got to give you your flowers for making sure to keep his name relevant, because that's a name that a lot of people might not discuss around this time, but is a deserving name to be in the conversation. If we're going to grandfather, and not to say these guys haven't been productive this season, but if we're going to grandfather LeBron James into being a starter, if we're going to grandfather Kevin Durant into being a starter, if we're going to grandfather Stephen Curry into being a starter, then we also have to look look at guys who are in that guard that has still been playing at a high level, like a James Harden, and say, well, dang, doesn't he deserve his just due as well? You know?
Yes, 100%. And like that was literally like my thinking. Like, J-Dub's gonna make more All Star games too. I'm thinking that, and like that's part of my mentality. He's gonna make some All Star team going down the line. Again, it might be tough because Chet Holmgren will be healthy next a few years, hopefully too, which is gonna be tough for J-Dub.
Yeah.
But man, James Harden, we thought the fall was coming for him too, and it hasn't. He's still
Yeah.
been very productive. So we got to shout out the Unks, man. The West team is full of Unks right now, but they have been high productive Unks. So we got to show we got to show them some love.
Yo.
We got to show them some love.
Facts.
But okay, last but not least, before we go into the snubs,
Okay.
Alperen Şengün. I feel like we've said his name like 4 times, but we haven't been able to discuss him. I'll go talk about him for a bit.
Yeah.
Second best team in the league. Honestly, Jalen Green would be in this conversation if he had this January stretch for like the last 2 months before this, because he has been amazing this January. But as we talked about Jalen Green in the past, he just starts off the year so slow that we can't like put him into these conversations because he always falls too far behind in terms of making All-Star teams, All NBAs, all that. But Alperen Şengün, since day one, super consistent. The Rockets' best player, 19, 10, and 5. It's the same way like you see. Maybe not to the extent of Jokic, but how the Nuggets use Jokic as an offensive hub. The way you see Domantas Sabonis is used as an offensive hub over there in Sacramento. He is slowly but surely getting into that realm, and he is upping his field goal percentage. He's getting better at free throws, by the way, guys. I know Şengün started early bad with his free throws. He's getting up there at 70%. But he has been just like the guy. I mean, we complained about him earlier in the season that he wasn't able to end games, but he's become such a threat down low, doing a bit of everything, a Swiss Army knife, especially on the offensive end, that you can just put him in so many different lineups. Şengün deserves some love, and if the Rockets, who I think deserve one representative, it's going to be Şengün.
I completely agree. I think this is the best way to lay it out. The dude's averaging 19 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, nearly a steal and a half on the second best team in the Western Conference as a member of a team that didn't even make the play-in tournament last year. Houston needs an all-star.
Yeah.
Houston needs an all-star, and the name is Alperen Şengün.
Simple as that. You love to see it. Before we move on to the East, Jay, we talked about some of the guys that we missed out. Is there any other guys that you want to shout out on this list?
So yeah, I mean, obviously, one of the other guys that just barely fell off on my list is a guy who's going to be in real conversations around this trade deadline. He might even be a very huge target depending on how the circumstances are. And right now it's favoring the Kings, but that is De'Aaron Fox. Remember, at the beginning of the season, TV, it was looking bleak for the Kings. And then when they fired Mike Brown, it seemed like all hell was about to break loose. The trade rumors were about to kick into full overdrive. And then all of a sudden, Doug Christie became coach of the year. I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on in Sacktown. Yeah. All I know is that De'Aaron Fox is averaging 25, 6, and 1.5 steals in a year where, in reality, even if he wanted to go to another team, you know what's just as intriguing as moving to a different destination? Getting an extra 40 to 60 million if you make All NBA. You know what I mean? And the first start to really solidifying yourself as an All NBA caliber player is first making the public realize that you are an all-star. Unfortunately, De'Aaron falls just barely off of this list for me, and is a guy that I think had the year started more like how the last couple of weeks has been, De'Aaron would be in a much stronger position overall in terms of this kind of conversation. Unfortunately, these guys are getting hot at a time where it's more of where we would more be giving him the nod as of what have you done for me lately, as opposed to taking the full totality of his work. That's where guys like a James Harden, for example, becomes even more intriguing, just because it's been impactful throughout the entirety of the season. And like I said, got the Clippers at the top 6 seed right now. Again, similar to Houston, coming into the year with relatively low expectations and significantly playing above their means.
100%. What's it called? De'Aaron Fox, 100% on my list. I'm just looking at his stats now. It's a freaking shame this man's a one-time All-Star with the amount of production he's had over there in Sacramento. It's absolutely crazy. But yeah, he's been doing the same this year. It's again just a slow start for the Kings that really has hindered him from being a part of those conversations. He's right there. It's just a little bit too late, as you said. Yeah. But yeah, shout out to De'Aaron Fox. He's been great. J-Dub, like I mentioned, first guy off my list. And then guys like Luka and John Morant, like, they just missed too many games this year. Luka playing
Yeah.
22 games just takes him out of like any sort of like award or all-star sort of qualification. And then John Morant, once again, having a really good year. No one is like, I feel like no one is appreciating the fact that this man's averaging like under 30 minutes per game, and he's still putting up like 20 and 8 on like the third best team in the West. So like it's crazy numbers and like crazy productivity for the limited amount of minutes he plays. But again, just too many injuries. Like he's missed like so much like time. Like I swear he misses like weeks at a time too, John Morant. So
Yeah.
like it's unfortunate, but they get their representative from us, Jaren Jackson Jr. Let us know what you guys think down below. What other guys that do you think missed out on? Is there any names that we didn't even talk about? Let us know down below. Jay, it's time to move on to the Eastern Conference, and
Yeah.
I think there's a few guys that are like you might have to reach a little bit. Again, there's not as much like top end talent in the East as there is in the West, but I think it's gonna make for a very interesting All-Star game. So we're gonna start off with the Eastern Conference, guard with the guards. But
Okay.
Jay, I'm gonna throw it over to you. Who do you have as your two Eastern Conference guards for the All-Star game?
Mine were easy. For the guards that were locks in the reserve spot, I've been on the Cade Cunningham trail this entire time. Remember, before the season, my bold prediction was that the Detroit Pistons would at least make the play-in tournament. TV, they're sixth in the Eastern Conference right now. It's looking slight, my boy. It's looking slight. And then my other guy is obviously
Damian Lillard, who right now is playing at one of the best levels he's played in his career, especially over the last couple of seasons. 25 points, 7.5 assists, 38% from three, which is the best in like 4 years for him. A really rough start for the Milwaukee Bucks, but they have picked up steam, and him and Giannis as a 1-2 punch has looked, I mean, arguably like, if not the best, then like somewhere in the top 3 of most potent duos to deal with on offense this year. Definitely has to be in there.
Yeah, I'm not gonna have to say much because I have the exact same two on my list to start off with. Cade Cunningham. Turnovers aside, let's not talk about the turnovers.
Right? No.
Let's not talk about the fact that this man had 2 back-to-back games with 10 turnovers. I just remember seeing that I saw a tweet about that, and I'm like, that is ridiculous. But the Raptors forced 10 turnovers on Trae Young the other day, so I can't even be too mad. But yeah, but Cade Cunningham, the Pistons are the 6th seed. Need I say more? This man is like, we knew that this guy had like superstar potential, and we talked about this every year.
Yes.
The Magic have done it. The Rockets have done it.
Yes.
All teams have gone competent.
Come on, TV. Say the word again for the people in the back.
Competent.
Oh man.
You just need competency in a lineup. It's not too hard, guys. You can see the Pistons were freaking 14 wins last year.
Come on.
Now they've like what? They're like 22, 23 wins so far this year. Absolutely crazy. Cade Cunningham being the best player. He is an absolute lock. The fact that he was getting like potential starter, like starter recognition, like that's how you know there's a turnaround over there in Detroit. Shout out to Cade Cunningham, and then Damian Lillard, man. Again, no one I feel like whenever people talk about the Bucks, obviously people talk about Giannis's crazy season and how it's like he's probably third in MVP, but Damian Lillard deserves a lot of love for that too. To again, 25 points per game, almost 40% from three, 92% from the free throw line, 45% from the field. Finally finding out his place next to Giannis. I think last year the problem was like he didn't know like where he could find his shots, where he could find his spots next to Giannis. And after a year and a half at this point, he's finally starting to get it. And I think this chemistry is going to continue to grow as the season goes on, and they're going to become a very lethal duo from the playoffs. So yes, we agree both with our guard picks.
Yeah, man.
But we're gonna move on, Jay, to the forwards. We're gonna go on to the forwards here.
Okay.
This one's a bit interesting because I feel like there's a couple of locks here, but in this one, like you have to kind of like reach for some other players. We'll have to wait and see. But Jay, who do you have as your 3 forwards?
I'm not gonna lie, the forward spot is pretty gross. I think the guard spot was actually a little bit more difficult to discern. I think the forward spot is pretty gross, especially given the fact that Paolo Banchero and Franz both missed so much time, and they both would easily TV be in the All-Star game.
I was gonna say this when it comes to the snubs, like the fact that Franz, in my opinion, Powell, because of the amount of games they missed, like couldn't be able to be on this list made this a lot harder because I felt like those guys were on their way to becoming locks as All-Stars. But now with the games played and stuff, like, again, we docked some guys from it. We have to dock the Magic guys, unfortunately. But we had to reach a bag a little bit in our bag here. But Jay, who are your 3 forwards?
Nah, facts. They definitely, them getting taken off the board definitely made things much, much more difficult because these two guys, I mean, after the very first month of the season, you could have just went ahead and penciled it in. Paulo damn near was giving his All NBA case. Yeah, he dang near gave us an All NBA case through the first month. But the 3 guys I'm going with is, I think Jaylen Brown should be there. I believe that Evan Mobley definitely should be there. And because the rest of the forward spot just is not intriguing to me, Cleveland, here you go. I think Jared Allen should be in there. I think Jared Allen should be there as well.
Interesting. Okay, we have 2 of the same here. I got Evan Mobley. Yeah, I mean, no doubt. Even I'm going to be completely honest. Even when Franz and Powell are here, I still think Evan Mobley deserves some love over here in the All-Star. So we got Evan Mobley there. I have Jaylen Brown. I know his efficiency this past month has really kind of dragged down his numbers a little bit.
Never been his strong suit.
Never been a strong suit. But he had a very strong start to the season. I think that's enough to carry it. Again, without the Powell and Franz thing, it's also made it a lot easier to kind of slide Jaylen Brown in. But like, he still had a very good year. I don't want to take anything away from him. He's been fantastic. Yeah. But for my 3rd forward, I was thinking Jared Allen, but the Pacers have really turned it around, and I want to give that love to Pascal Siakam. Pascal has been honestly, their most consistent, their best player so far this year for the Indiana Pacers. And I know they started off super strong, but they are the 5th seed right now. They are 1 game behind the Milwaukee Bucks, 20 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Pascal is shooting 50% from the field and like 50%, 52% from the field, 41% from 3. Underrated season. And again, would he have made it if like Franz and Powell was in the mix? Maybe not. Maybe he gets some wild card love. But at the same time, I think Pascal Siakam can slide right in here as one of the forwards.
TV, do I smell Raptors bias by any chance?
It's close between him and Jared Allen. For me, no. I am not claiming this Raptors bias. I truly believe he deserves it.
Okay. Yeah. I don't. In all fairness, I actually do not hate the Pascal Siakam pick. Did you already share his full-on splits like across the board?
Yeah, 74% from the free throw line. Yeah, but he's 43% from 3, 41% from 3, 54% from the field. Solid season.
It just feels like a very normal Pascal season to me. Very normal.
I will say it is I would say he's playing under his capabilities even. But that's because of the Pacers' slow start. I think that everyone just kind of struggled in the early parts of the season, and now they're finally kind of building it back up. But he has been their most consistent best player all year. I'm not putting Tyrese Halliburton in that best player so far this year because he has been a freaking roller coaster.
Okay, and that's fair because I would actually say that if you wanted to use your Raptors bias, I would make the argument that had Scotty Barnes played more games, I think he actually has a better case than Pascal does.
He has been better this year. I will say that he has been better.
You know, that 3-point percentage. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. But
the Pacers have turned it around. I'm going to show them some love because they actually turned their season around.
Fair.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I believe that Pascal Siakam is a good selection. I don't know if he's over Jared Allen though, and that's the part I'm a little hesitant about.
I know they're great, but 4.
TV, the dude is averaging 14, 10, and 2. And he's
72% from the field.
72% from the field, and he's top 6 in contested shots. And he plays next to Evan Mobley, who is top 3 in DPOY. He's top 6.
He deserves some love. He was the other guy. No, he was literally the only other guy I'm putting like him and Pascal. But I think that I just wanted the Pacers to get a representative here.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. This is on brand, but a little bit off brand in a sense. If Paulo and Franz both were healthy, I think we both believe that they're locks to make the game, right?
If they played at least 33 or 34 games, I would have given it to them.
Who would you bump off based off of your list? Who are the 2 that you would unfortunately have to bump off?
Jaylen Brown and Siakam.
Okay.
Jalen,
Okay.
I'll bump both of them off. Those are the guys where I feel like, like again, Jalen Brown the last month or so he's been struggling heavy from the like in terms of like shooting wise, efficiency wise. So like I felt like that again. I know I know it's like a what have you done for me lately league, but like
Yeah.
those are starting. But with the Celtics also struggling, I feel like they're not guaranteed a second All Star. I feel like getting
Yeah.
those two Magic guys in there, especially with the way their seasons were going, deserve the bump over a Jalen Brown, and then Siakam again.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a reach, but when you need forwards on this, you need to like kind of like find some like you have to nitpick some little things here.
So the main reason why I asked that is because your answer further indicates something that I do think is important, and that's that Evan Mobley is a lock for the
Oh,
All-Star game.
he's a lot.
There is no
He's a
way
lot.
that my man gets to average a career high 18 points a game and eight and a half to nearly 9 rebounds per night, while also being like the second or third best rim defender in the entire league
Oh no, he's my number two in depoy. He's my number two in depoy. He's been that good.
on the best team in the Eastern Conference record-wise. I mean, come on, man. I mean,
Okay.
there's just no way that he can't be on the list. But man, did this become much more complicated when you have to take off two guys that just like far and away were obviously all-stars if they were healthy.
It sucks, man. I truly wish that we had those guys available because it would have made this a whole, and I mean a whole lot easier. But unfortunately, just because of the games miss, you can't put them on, which is really which really sucks. But Jay, we're gonna move on
Yeah.
to our two wild card spots.
Yeah.
And Jay, I don't know about you, but I have two guards.
Me too.
I
Me
have
too.
two
And,
guards.
and it might be the same two for all we know. It depends.
There was one for me that was an absolute lock. Even just like the one guy, I'm like, I need to have him in. The second guard, I was like, yo, you don't understand how much I'm teetering between these two guys. But I want to hear what you have first. Who are your two guards?
So I'm gonna say the guy that we both have is a lock, and everybody else better agree. So everybody, at the count of three, raise your hands and say the same name. 1, 2, 3. The answer is Trae Young. Thank you very much. Thank you
Oh,
very much. Yes,
okay.
yes, it is.
Okay, good.
23 points, leads the league in assists at 11 and a half, and has a career high 1.3 steals for an Atlanta Hawks team that has been absolutely phenomenally punching above its weight this year. We just were raving about the Atlanta Hawks, whether it was Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson. We talked about DeAndre Hunter coming off the bench. This team is playing at a really high level right now, and even though the Hawks are in the nice spot in the Eastern Conference, this team with Trae Young as the leader has been balling. They have been one of the only teams, if not maybe the only team, that has successfully beat the Knicks, the Celtics, and the Cavs this year, right?
Yeah.
Knocked down all the big dogs in the Eastern Conference. And Trae Young has been a top-level performer in each of those games. This is a guy that I just don't think you're allowed to walk around at the guard spot, averaging a double-double, and keep missing the dang All-Star game. Put some respect on Trae Young's name. Let's stop doing this thing where we continue to act like because he's a villain in New York that he's a villain to the rest of the league. This guy is an elite-level talent, and he should be treated as such. He is definitely a top 5 to top 6 guard in the Eastern Conference. And we can make a real debate about the rest of the league. And maybe that's for a different podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe that's for a TikTok. We'll see. But this guy, put it this way. I'm going to put it in bold-faced letters for everybody. If Trae Young does not make the All-Star game, it is a crime against NBA basketball. That is my take.
You make me very confident with my second reserve then, because my second reserve was Trae Young. Honestly, when you said like guaranteed, I was ready to say Darius Garland.
Okay, well, he's the other guy that I have on the list, so that's
Cool.
perfect.
Both of us have.
That's perfect.
Okay,
Cool.
I thought that Darius Garland was more of a lock than Trae Young, but I feel
Fair.
Look, 22 points per game, 7 assists, 50, 43, 88. I'm sorry, this is a point guard. This is a point guard in the league. He has an effective field goal percentage of 60% effective field goal, which is unreal, especially when you take into account the struggles he had all year round last year, to the point where people were thinking, maybe they should start building around Donovan Mitchell. Maybe he doesn't need Darius Garland by his side because it just doesn't feel like it's working. Well, damn, it's working now, and he has been one of the best guards out east, probably would have higher numbers if it weren't for freaking Donovan Mitchell, but it's one of the most dynamic backcourts in the league. So it's just pick your poison. I saw my Raptors give up freaking 41 points to Darius Garland earlier this year. He's a freaking monster. And with all the efficiency that's going on, the fact that he had a bounce back year, number one team in the East, for me, he was the lock. But
Fair.
I'm so glad you mentioned Trae Young. Because I was on the fence because I'm like, man, the numbers of LaMelo Ball are kind of hard to deny. It's hard to deny. But we've denied Bradley Beal in the past. I'm not down for that efficiency.
That's a funny name to evoke because that is very, very similar.
Yeah.
That is very, very similar.
We have denied Bradley Beal in the past. We are not allowing LaMelo Ball in here. I know he was almost a starter, but Jay, I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Yeah.
Show Trae Young some damn respect.
Jeez.
This guy, he has been one of the consistently the most one of the best guards in the East every year, and this year's no different. This guy's taking a backseat to Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, all these guys to get their opportunities. He's been feeding them the ball, and it's actually providing dividends for the Atlanta Hawks this year. Yes, the efficiency is not great. Trae Young and efficiency, they don't go well in the same sentence. Let's be completely honest. But one of the best playmakers in the league. Alongside, honestly, he's top 3 with Jokic and probably maybe LeBron or someone else like that. But he deserves to be up there in terms of one of the best playmakers in the league. Like you just mentioned, career high in steals, and he has this Hawks. Again, did the Hawks? Did anyone expect them to be in a play-in spot to be competing for a top 6 seed? No, they did not. People thought that without DeJounte Murray, that this team was potentially going to the fallout tank, if you remember correctly. We talked about it in the last episode, that people were trying to dream match Trae Young with Victor Wembanyama for the longest time. But no, he deserves his praise. He deserves the love that he has been one of the top guards in the league, one of the best passers, and I think he is an NBA All-Star. Honestly, I was doubting myself with the whole LaMelo Ball situation, but I'm glad that you're on board with Trae Young.
No, I completely agree with you in terms of the LaMelo Ball thing being what it is because, like you said, and it was a great, and I gotta say it again, it was a great name to evoke. Bradley Beal is a great representation of a guy that, yes, you get to drop 30 points a game on a bad Eastern Conference team. Great for you, but does it make you one of the top 12 dudes in your conference? Top 12, top 15 dudes in your conference? No. No, it does not.
Yes, 100%.
And you're a one-way player. We know that. Which further devalues your play. Yeah.
One way is an understatement.
And that further devalues your point to me. Personally.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, again, his best chance was the starters because that's where you get the flashy points. That's when you get the fan love. Yeah. But when it comes to the reserves and the guys who deserve it, I feel and I'm glad both of us agreed that Trae Young and Darius Garland a lot more impactful for their team than LaMelo Ball on a 10-win, 12-win Hornets team right now.
Yeah.
So I think those guys definitely deserve the nod over him. I like those 2 picks. But Jay, snubs. Some guys that you were thinking of that just couldn't make it in.
Okay, so all, the bias with the Orlando guys out the way now, since we know they're obviously nowhere in the pocket. I still think Tyrese Maxey should fairly be in this conversation.
Yeah, I had him as one of the guys. Jay, I want to shout out one guy for you.
Okay.
Zach LaVine.
Okay, so that's actually where I was going to go next. I was going to try to leave my Bulls bias to the end, but let me go ahead and do it now.
I knew you were going to, and I'm going to do it for you. I think Zach LaVine deserves some love here.
And I appreciate you alley-ooping the Zach LaVine love to me to be able to get into this mode because I think that this is one of those guys that's similar to James Harden when we talked about the Western Conference, just not getting enough burn in terms of this kind of conversation, given what his contributions to the Chicago Bulls are. Now, granted, the team's success does not match the overall productivity that Zach LaVine is providing, but especially for a guy that, let's be honest, still is playing himself into being one of the biggest potential trade targets in the next coming week when we're going to have one of our biggest episodes of 2025. Yeah. This guy has had a real bounce back season after last year with 24 points, 5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, shooting 51, 44, 80. This dude is
incredible.
balling.
He's balling out this year.
He's balling, and I don't know if somebody told him and Nikola Vucevic that it would guarantee them a way out of Chicago if they decide to have career years.
But these two decided to switch on a gear that would have been very nice to have when we played the Milwaukee Bucks in the postseason in 2021. Because then maybe we would have won more than one game. That's just me, Bulls. That's just me and my Bulls fandom. But what I really am trying to get at here is,
in an Eastern Conference where we really aren't even sure about the guys that really deserve to be on this list. And granted, don't get me wrong, I think the guys that we end up having on our full-fledged list are the right dudes. I think Zach LaVine has a good case against everybody that's on the reserves list, though.
No, he does. He 100% does. And I think this is why I wanted to do it because, like, remember, this guy was coming off, like, 2 seasons where he was just injury-riddled to the point where you're like, does this guy even have any value in the league anymore on a long-term deal?
Yep.
Now you're possibly going to get, by all reports, the Suns might be giving 3 first-round picks up for this man. Like, this guy is still one of the most reliable three-point shooters in the league, one of the best drivers in the league, and he, like, can do a little bit of everything because of his athleticism. Yeah. He proved more than anything is that I am still an all-star caliber player, and I could be that for any team that decides to trade for me. We talk about a freaking show and tell, a showcase for the Bulls this year before the season. Like, here are our guys that we want you guys to get traded. Right. They're playing at the freaking highest level right now.
Yeah.
So anyone, please trade for Zach LaVine. So like, I'm just shout out to him for having such a great season, and just for myself, just other guys that I was like thinking of putting on this list. Of course, the 2 Magic guys. The only other guy I had in mind was, I guess, LaMelo Ball, maybe Jalen Johnson if he if the Hawks were doing a little bit better.
Yeah.
But besides that, I mean, like, I think we mentioned all the guys in the East.
I think it's funny because I think the one guy we didn't mention who was actually getting a lot of buzz, at least earlier on in January, was Tyler Hero. And I never really believed in the hype all the way. I definitely think that if you had to discern between, let's say, Tyrese Maxey, Tyler Hero, and LaMelo Ball as the guys who fell into our snub list,
I think we lead with LaMelo.
Yes.
Just for his individual productivity more than anything.
Shout to Hero, though. Shout to Hero. No,
yeah, definitely shout out to those guys. But I think that even though the East was a nasty, group to go through, I feel like the list was still relatively
easy to construct, to be honest.
It's the guards. It's really just the guards. The forwards, like, when you remove the Magic guys, you have to start picking at straws there. But when it came to, like, the guards, like, you have plenty of choice over there in the East. Yeah. So, shout out to us. If you guys let us know down below what you guys think of our Eastern Conference reserves. Let us know. Do you agree or disagree? Are there any guys that we even left off the list that we didn't even mention in our snubs? Yeah. Let us know down below. But Jay, it's time to move on to our next topic, and it is time to talk the NBA trade deadline, man. It's a crazy time. It's a crazy time right now, and what we're gonna do, like we talked about like earlier on. Yeah. Is we're going to try and be putting on our GM hats. So what we have here is we both have a trade that we're going to present to the other guy. We haven't told each other what the trade is yet. Nope. But we're going to present it to the other person, and we're going to see if they agree, or are they going to agree to the trade, or are they going to decline the trade. Jay, are you ready to do this? How do you feel about this topic?
I'm ready, and actually, I'm really intrigued to use this first trade because it's going to preview what our next episode is in terms of what kind of guys we're going to be discussing in full next episode.
So this will be a real good taste of the kind of names that we're coming up with, because I don't think we're going to be shooting low. I don't think there's going to be too many Bruce Brown type conversations here. We're going to be talking about real impact level players that we potentially are going to have on the move, and that we may actually potentially see move on the trade deadline date.
Jay, you can't be lowering down Bruce Brown's trade value. You can't be saying.
I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry.
Guys, call for Kelly Olynyk, call for Chris Boucher, call for Bruce Brown. Please call our phone, please. Like, we're winning too many games right now.
I'm sorry, yeah.
But yeah, we have a trade. Jay, can I actually offer my trade up to you first?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'm gonna offer my trade up to you. Here's my offer, and the reason I want to start off with this is because Jay, it involves your team.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
And Jay, I am the Orlando Magic GM calling you because
Oh God, I'm tired of hearing them call.
I know, but I feel like as much as Levine is connected to the Lakers, as much as he's connected to the Suns, the one team I personally want to see him on and make a deep playoff run is the Orlando Magic. That's the one team I want to see him actually like do well on, and I think this trade could do something for you. So Jay, as the
Okay.
Bulls GM, here's my offer to you. I'm gonna give you one of your boys, Jonathan Isaac.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you Cole Anthony. Gonna give you Jet Howard. Gonna give you a 2025 Denver first round pick. Gonna give you 2 second round picks, and I'm also gonna give you a lottery protected 2027 pick. And Jay, I'm gonna talk a bit more about this package because I feel like there's some things to think about here. But Jay, Jonathan Isaac's contract next year is gonna be basically half because he has a 25 million um cap hit this year. That's gonna go down to 15 million next year because he's gonna be on a shorter deal, and that deal depreciates for the next 4 years after that. So in terms of trying to re-sign Josh Giddey, some other guys you have on your roster, makes it a lot easier. Cole Anthony, if you ever want to try him as a six man, go right ahead. Or he's a tradable contract at 12 million per year. It's nothing too crazy. You get Jet Howard, who is still on his rookie contract. Maybe you can turn something out of him, and then you get some picks over here.
That is interesting. The 2025 Denver pick is also a little interesting. We know it's going to be, significantly in the 20s, but
It's top five
uh,
protected. It's top five protected. Yeah. It's top five.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be one of those that falls in the 20s. They're going to
Yeah.
be too dang good. But having multiple bites at the apple would be kind of impactful. This is still kind of looking like a top heavy draft with Cooper Flag and those guys, but there's always, with good GMing, there's a chance to be able to get somebody nice at 20 to kind of help with revamping. I'm a little worried about Cole Anthony because of his, like, the undersized redundancy that kind of comes with him and Kobe White.
I don't think he'll start for you guys, but he could definitely be like, because I imagine that you guys are going to be making other trades as well, which is probably trading Lonzo Ball, which is probably trading Nikola Vucevic, which leaves a little bit of wiggle room in that guard rotation.
Yeah. I think, okay, so the reason why I would say yes to this trade has actually more to do with the cap flexibility that comes with Jonathan Isaac paired with the draft capital. Because A, we're not getting fleeced. We're getting multiple draft picks out of this. I believe you mentioned three. It was a 2025 and then two.
So 2025 Denver pick, which is top five protected.
Right.
You get a lottery protected Magic pick in 2027.
Right.
Which, let's be honest, the Magic should probably still be like in the like a top team in the league by then.
Yeah.
But you also get 2 second round picks, one in 2026, which is the least favorable of Detroit, Milwaukee,
Okay.
and a 2027 Boston second round pick.
So we're getting 4 draft picks, JI, a tradable contract in Cole Anthony, and a young potential knockdown shooter in Jet Howard, essentially. I think that you almost have to take that, especially given the fact that the value on Zach LaVine is still so tricky. I'm going to roll with yeah, and I think the cap flexibility that Jonathan Isaac provides is so huge. Plus, I'm not going to lie, that would actually be a big hit to Orlando's defense. It would be a big boon for the Chicago Bulls because our center rotation is not very good, in case you haven't noticed, and it's only going to get worse if Nikola Vucevic also gets on the chopping block, which we have to assume that if Zach LaVine gets traded, that Nikola Vucevic isn't that far behind. So it kind of kills two birds with one stone in a way that I could kind of roll with. I hate the fact that the Bulls have inadvertently built the Orlando Magic into a damn near title contender. But I mean, if you're gonna help them out, might as well finish the job, right? Jeez.
So you're gonna say yes to that trade?
Yeah, I actually don't hate that one too bad.
Very nice. I honestly think when I saw that cap flexibility of Jonathan Isaac, I was thinking of trading you guys KCP, but I don't think that the Magic want to let go of the KCP experiment just yet.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Isaac, yes, he's gonna be on a good deal, but if you're gonna really try and go for a playoff run, which this Magic team should do, especially in the East, where if you have a good week, you're probably going to be the top five in the standings. You're missing offense. They're 29th in offense. They're 30th in 3-point shooting, and Zach LaVine is going to help both of those out a lot. And he when he works with their fast style of play next to Paolo Banchero, next to Franz Wagner, so I think it's a great fit. Also, I forgot to mention this trade that sadly, Jay, that you guys also going to be trading Torrey Craig. So, yeah,
Eh,
to make the trade work. But yeah,
eh.
Jay says yes to this trade. Jay, what trade do you have for myself?
Okay, so the one that I found was actually pretty interesting because it's about a player that I feel like has kind of lost steam in terms of our conversations around him, and it has more to do with him not being on the floor more than anything. But a guy that I still feel like there's no way in the world we go past this trade deadline and this dude is not moved unless this organization is just as poorly ran as we think they are.
And that's Brandon Ingram. I think this is a guy that's being under discussed as a real trade asset and a guy that has to be moved this year if they want to get anything for him, because when the summer hits, it's going to get quiet. It's going to get quiet, and it's going to become more difficult when other teams are going to be at play. And the Brooklyn Nets and the Utah Jazz and teams like that, the Detroit Pistons, who are a team I'm going to talk about in a second, are going to just have the money to go out and go get the guy for the free ski. So the trade that I found was Brandon Ingram to the Detroit Pistons.
Okay, so I'm the Detroit Pistons GM, I guess.
So you're the Detroit Pistons GM in this one. The trade that I found is Brandon Ingram to the Detroit Pistons for Isaiah Stewart, Tim Hardaway Jr., Bobby Klintman, the rookie they just drafted, Wendell Moore Jr., and the 2028 first round pick, top 10 protected.
And that's a Pistons pick, top 10 protected.
This will be a Pistons pick, yes.
Okay. At this point,
do you need me to give it some sauce to it?
Okay, if you want to, what are you going to say?
So, in terms of actually explaining this, there's a couple of things that obviously have to be factored in. First off, we are desperate. And in that being the case, we are so desperate to move off of Brandon Ingram, given the circumstances, that you can make an argument that given how little Brandon Ingram has been on the floor consistently throughout this year, that this package is maybe overselling it. We're getting a 35-37% three-point knockdown shooter in Tim Hardaway Jr. so far this year. And you as the New Orleans Pelicans are getting two centers, two young centers, a team that has struggled in the front court at that position, by the way, especially with the trading of Valanciunas, and specifically Isaiah Stewart being a guy that the New Orleans Pelicans have tried to go after in the past. I don't think that Yves Missi is the long-term answer. I think he is a good portion of being able to fill out a rotation, but I do think that Isaiah Stewart might be a better overall fit in the near future for the New Orleans Pelicans. I also look at the fact that Bobby Klintman, budding guy as well, and the 2028 first round pick, top 10 protected, I think is still going to be a solid pick, even though we have a real understanding that, let's be honest, I mean, it might fall in the top 10, but the Detroit Pistons are trying to get good. Brandon Ingram is probably like one of the bigger pieces they're going to move for that, and the Pistons are feeling themselves right now. The Pistons are feeling themselves. I know you guys have to be. Cade Cunningham is looking like an all-star. You guys are top 6 in the Eastern Conference. You guys lost Jaden Ivey. You need a secondary ball handler. You need a wing guy that's solidified, because remember, Tobias Harris only has one more year after this season as well. Just saying.
You know what, Jay? I was thinking, my first reaction was no, actually, just because I feel like with the Pistons, injury, with the injuries they have with Jaden Ivey and also the in and out of Asar Thompson, that missing out, losing out on a big, plus Tim Hardaway Jr., who's actually been a bit of a revelation this year for the Pistons, averaging, like you mentioned, 11 points per game on 38% shooting from three. Losing that type of production is kind of tough, but Cade Cunningham's having a fantastic year. Malik Beasley, talk about a revelation. This man should be in the freaking 3-point contest again, by the way.
Right.
But also, he's been amazing this year in terms of averaging 16 points a game. Shout out to him. You know what? I'm gonna say yes. And I think, like you mentioned, the Pistons right now, they're feeling themselves. I think that Brandon Ingram comes in and kind of we don't know if Jaden Ivey's going to come back or not. That's the thing.
Yeah.
We don't know whether he's going to be able to come back before the playoffs or if he's able to come back during the season at all. Having Brandon Ingram there, you can kind of, I mean, if he ends up going to free agency, you probably have the money to get him. But this is more of a trial run to see how he can build that chemistry already with the Cade Cunningham and see how that sort of combo works. And then when you think of guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., who you guys brought in potentially to be a trade piece later on down the line,
right?
you're not really losing out on too much. The only guy that I'm kind of like it kind of sucks I'm losing out on is Isaiah Stewart, because not only is he a backup big for this team, he's also the muscle for this team. He's also kind of like the Detroit Piston bad boy of 2025 so
Yeah.
far. So it's going to be stuck out missing on that. But to get one of the most sought after wings in free agency next year for like half a season and potentially a playoff run to pair up with Cade Cunningham, and you're giving up a top 10 protected pick, like you'd predict the Pistons would be better at that point. So if that's the case, I will say yes.
And see, it works as a threefold, right? Because if you look at the entirety of the trade itself, let's start with obviously somebody in Tim Hardaway Jr., like you mentioned beforehand, a guy that has kind of been a revelation this year, but also is a redundancy to Malik Beasley, who's
Yeah.
also having a revelation of a year in his own right. Then you go to someone like Isaiah Stewart, who by trading Isaiah Stewart, you actually indicate something that hasn't been discussed enough this season, which is your belief in Jalen Duren as a long-term center for yourself. You are now putting yourself in a position to commit to Jalen Duren moving forward, which is something that also gives you good camaraderie in the locker room, because that's another guy who kind of feels safe within the core of the Detroit Pistons moving forward. And then you also position yourself as the Detroit Pistons with the Bobby Clippin, with the Brandon Ingram, excuse me, who, like you said beforehand, gives you another significant upside as a team that's looking to actually make the postseason, at least at bare minimum play in the play-in tournament. You get to be on the biggest stage with the best punchers you can have,
barring the fact that Jaden Ivey is going to miss the entirety of the season, the entire rest of the season. It gives you a real opportunity to see what these guys look like on the biggest stage with real overall talent built within. Brandon Ingram, like you said, you get him in the building. It's the Pascal Siakam effect. You get him in the building beforehand.
Yes,
You're
yes.
able to lock him down for what hopefully is a good potential playoff run. Maybe you don't go as far as the Indiana Pacers ended up going, of course, but you get to see what this team looks like on a big stage, and a stage they haven't been on in what, 6-7 years now?
At this point, since Blake Griffin, right? Since probably Blake
Right.
Griffin, yeah.
So
Yeah.
about 2017, 2018-ish?
Oh yeah, probably 2018. Yeah, 2018,
2018,
2019.
2019, more
Yeah,
likely.
yeah,
So about 6-7 years now.
yeah.
You get to put yourself in a real position to be on that stage with that guy already in your building, going into an offseason, mind you, where a lot of teams don't have a lot of money to begin with, and you're one of the few teams that does have the money to actually pay him what he may want.
Yeah.
Especially given the fact that Tobias Harris is going to be an expiring contract next season, which gives you even more flexibility if you're able to move off of him, for, cap flexibility, coming out of that summer. So
Yeah.
it's a threefold in terms of how it works out for Detroit. And it gives you the best of both worlds as a team that clearly wants to be good now, but a team that also still is trying to understand where they fit in the bigger picture of the Eastern Conference.
100%. I do like this trade. Actually, I don't know if this works with the trade. I don't know if you have it in front of you, but if you guys give us back Daniel Tice, would that be a deal breaker?
Would it be Daniel Tice instead of somebody or on top of
Just
somebody?
on top of Brandon Ingram.
I think you'd probably have to add another pick to fill it out. Because I'm not looking at it with all the numbers next to it.
Okay,
It's just
got
a
it,
proposal trade.
Yeah.
But I think you might. Daniel Tice would also be a good filler, by the way, just to be able to shore up that center position.
Sure. That's the only reason why. I think it's he's not going to eat up too many minutes from Jalen Duren. I just think it's someone like another veteran center that can kind of help him out as well, to kind of because he's been in the league for who knows how long at this point, Daniel Tice. But I think just adding someone like him to the trade, just another veteran presence add to that Pistons locker room.
I think it also would balance the trade out a little bit, because I will admit, I personally thought that this was an interesting trade just because I thought this was also a very hefty price for a Brandon Ingram who has not been consistently healthy so far, not just this season, but over the last couple of years. So I thought this was overall a very hefty package. But I think the other thing, too, is when you look at the center rotation of Isaiah Stewart, Yves Missy, and Bobby Clippman, it might even be in their best nature to also attach Daniel Tice to this in order to give all three of those guys real potential on the floor to get real minutes.
Yeah.
So that might actually be a good way to sweeten the deal, to also make it feel more like the Detroit Pistons are getting something super valuable out of it. Because again, Brandon Ingram, you are taking a significant swing, and maybe to sweeten up the deal because he's an expiring contract that they're going to essentially have to convince to stay. Throwing in a Daniel Tice as another like sure thing at the center position to make up for the fact that you're giving up your backup big might be a good way to kind of sweeten the deal. So I don't necessarily know if you would have to add anything else
Yeah.
as Detroit. But I think that might be a fair way to kind of balance it out.
Yeah. Also, yeah, I also kind of like went over the fact that maybe like Brandon Ingram has missed so much time this year. So
Yeah.
maybe it is kind of like a hefty price for like a injury riddled star who knows when he's going to come back for the Pelicans at all this year. But if he reasonably, if he's healthy by the deadline and he is able to like go on for the rest of the season, I would say that trade's worth it. If he's like if he's like good to go for the deadline and like going on for like post All-Star break, then I think that this trade is good.
Okay, so TV, this is actually my last question. I don't know if this is necessarily how you want to end the podcast, but I think it's a good question that I want to get an answer from you, and I think I might give my answer, or not. I'm going to give my answer as well. But I think it would be a good preview question for next episode, given the fact that we're going to be so heavily involved in all of the trade rumor stuff.
Yeah.
My question to you is, who are the top 5 guys that you are looking at on the trade market going into next week?
I'm gonna give you a few names again, not in any particular order, just because like again, this is just kind of we just kind of shoehorned this into the podcast, but like just some guys that like potentially I would like be on the lookout for. I would say again Zach LaVine, Jimmy Butler. Obviously, those are the two kind of like main guys that you want to be kind of like looking to in a trade. I would say Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson, again, one of those guys who I think would be good in a trade package potentially. Nikola Vucevic, just because a lot of these teams kind of just need a starting center, so or like some sort of like center depth. So I think, especially like some of these contenders, so I think that would be pretty good.
Okay.
And last but not least, I would say now that his name's getting thrown out there, Miles Turner.
Okay, cool. It's interesting name. I think that Miles Turner rounds out my 5. I think Zach LaVine has to be on that list still. I think that Vucevic by proxy has to be on that list as well. Brandon Ingram is on that list. And not to be obvious, because Jimmy Butler is such an obvious like last answer. My other answer, I'm just going to round out with Cam Johnson as well. The reason why I asked this question is because these are the type of names that you guys next episode should expect to hear about, because there are a couple of the guys that obviously are going to be big targets, so they have to be discussed, because there's a real opportunity for some teams to get really good really fast if they're able to acquire any of these dudes. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of trade packages me and TV can come up with and find to maybe see some of these dudes not only change teams, but hopefully land on teams where they can be real contenders in the process.
100%. And there's gonna be a lot of these guys that we're gonna be discussing in the next episode. Next week, guys, we're gonna have 2 episodes next week, and they're gonna be fully trade deadline related. So it's that type of season, guys. We're gonna be having 2 great episodes for that, and that's gonna happen next week. But if there are any other guys that you want to see as part of these trade packages, some guys that you want to see potential moves for, let us know down below in the comment section, and maybe we will consider those names as well. But Jay, we've reached another end of a fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Man, trade season is next week. We're giving you 2 episodes. We got series coming up later on this week in terms of dropping stuff on the TikToks and the YouTube Shorts, IG Reels, which means you have to follow the social media in order to be tapped in. I mean, we're at that point, TV. I told you. I said this last episode. The real start to the NBA season starts next week. Once the trade deadline hits, everything goes up in flames. Everybody starts at 0, and the race to the postseason really kicks off. I'm excited to see what we're able to get into next week in terms of the trade discussions. And next week on Thursday, when the trade deadline ends and the buzzer sounds, I think we're going to come out of that thing seeing a couple of teams be a little bit better than we expected, and a couple of teams that get left sitting at the table empty-handed. It's going to be a real interesting question to see who ends up on what side. But I definitely think that there are going to be some big names that move. The question is how quickly and what team is bold enough to go after them.
100%. And we're going to be talking about that all week, not only on this podcast, but check out the Hit Your Free Throws page if you want to be caught up with all of the early trades that happen, all of the trade rumors that we probably might discuss. All that stuff is going to be over there, especially throughout probably this week and also next week, because the trade deadline season, that's when stuff gets really, really interesting. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for all your support. Continue to support the Hit Your Free Throws podcast through all of our links below. Jay and I will be back next week for 2 episodes, remember. 2 episodes. So it's going to be a damn good week of episodes. Thank you guys for all your support. Hope you all have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out.
Peace.
Peace.